Hi YouTube, I'm Harl, and today I am doing a deck profile for one of my favorite Grand Archive decks. So I hope you enjoy it. I think the deck is really fun, and I think it's really interesting, so I hope you enjoy. Starting with the champion lineup, we have Spirit of Water, and then we have level 1 Tonoris, level 2 Tonoris, and the level 3 Tonoris that generates Obelisk Domain Tokens. We are playing Domain Tony. This is a very fun control deck in my opinion. This is my favorite deck in the game. And so, yeah. For our Divine Relic, we're playing Art of War. We are a control deck, so essentially giving all allies Summoning Sickness is very good at helping get farther in the game. And then you're generally banishing this card for one of two cards near the end of the game. For some draw power, we have Backup Charger and Chalice of Blood. At level 3, we have 30 HP, so this is usually pretty open. And then Backup Charger is just a really solid card. For some protection, we have Terrafring, Safeguard Amulet, and Radiant Protective Trinket. Trinket protects you from all water shenanigans. Terrafring protects you from being attacked for a turn, and Safeguard Amulet protects from effect damage for the turn. And then finally we have Alchemical Scripture and Archon Broadsword. These are the two cards that you would spend the Art of War to play out. This just draws you more cards, which just gets you closer and closer to your final victory. And then Broadsword is one of your finishers that does a lot of damage. Starting with the norm cards, we have 4 copies of Dungeon Guide. We are a level 3 deck, so these just help us get to the level 3. But to go along with them, we also play 4 copies of Academy Guide. Tonoris is probably the best champion to use Academy Guide with, because Tonoris can just protect the Academy Guide. So these just help you get up to your level 3 as fast as possible, so you can start building up all your tokens and domains super well. So next we have 4 copies of Shenzhen. I definitely mispronounced that, but this is just a 2/3 for 3, so it applies some early pressure. If you imbue it, it's a bit harder to kill, so it's just kind of nice for just applying that early pressure. It generally won't do a ton for your game state, but it can just help you clear boards and help you start hitting your opponent a little bit. Next we have 3 copies of Zhengzhou. In general, you do want the draw 2 effect. That is the best effect on this card. But if you are doing the recover 4 ability, again, that just brings your life total back down, which makes it a bit harder to kill you. And then for our last norm ally, we have 2 copies of Stalwart Shieldmate. Just a taunt with floating memory, so it does some protection and then helps you level up. Then we have 4 copies of Fast Cure. Very similar to the Zhengzhou, where just having that recover can bring your life total back in line, so it's a bit hard to kill you. It also has floating memory, and so sometimes you will just play this to put in the graveyard for the floating memory. You have 3 copies of Coronation Ceremony, just to protect you from some of the effect damage of spells out there. Fractals are part of the meta, so just having these as a form of protection is really nice. If you're not facing those decks, they're pretty easy side outs. We have the 1 turbocharge, because we run the backup charger, just is a form of draw power. And then for our norm domains, we have 3 copies of Eternal Kingdom. This just gives all your domains reservable. You do have an upkeep cost, but it's very, very easy to maintain. You can even pay the upkeep with the domains that you have out if absolutely necessary. It's not usually that bad to do so. It also does give you access to the draw 2 power of Zhengzhou. And then we also have 2 copies of Chibi. This just taxes all allies for attacking, so it makes it a bit harder for your opponent to kill you because they're just having to pay their taxes. For water, we are playing 4 copies of Frostborn Paladin, which is a 2/3 for 3 with intercept, and then while it doesn't go off all the time, it is usually a bonus of just getting the buff counter and the draw card. The draw card is really what you're wanting if you're using that ability, but sometimes it's just nice to put out a 2/3 interceptor. We have 4 copies of Fracturize. This is just a solid card for any water deck. So has the floating memory, allows you to turn things into fractals, including your own things, which is just really nice. Got 4 copies of Storm of Thorns and 3 copies of Diffusive Block. Just has some more forms of protection, as well as some more floating memory. And then for domains, we have 4 copies of Dormant Sacrificial Altar. These just draw you a card on enter. The other ability never comes up. The other nice thing about them is they are not unique, so you can just keep putting more of these out there to kind of cover your domain costs. And then we have 3 copies of Zucheng, which just forces your opponent to pay more taxes. For Neos, we are playing 4 copies of Atmos Armor type Ares and 4 copies of Blade of Creation. This is just how once you hit level 3, it just becomes super hard for you to die because of the token it summons. And we will go over what all the tokens do, but due to the token it summons, it makes it a lot harder for your opponent to kill you. Not impossible, but it is significantly harder. Plus, this thing does kind of quickly scale into being a beat stick. And then you have 4 copies of the Blade of Creation, which is basically how you win your games. With your sword token that you can summon, you're cleaving for 7, or if you use the Archon Broadsword, I've cleaved for numbers up to I've cleaved for 20 before, which is usually enough to, if it doesn't close out the game, it will make it very, very hard for your opponent to come back or give you a way to close out the game that turn anyway. So, yeah. So obviously your side deck is going to be dependent on the tournament you're going to and the meta you're expecting to face. I usually just play at locals, and at my locals we get a bit of everything. So I do have some generic cards in here as well. But the main things that are there often are Nico, we have Jin, we have Fractals, we have Shinyu Guoja. So those are generally the main things that I see. So yeah, so we have Quicksilver Grail and Sensor Wrestle Piece. These are really good for Nico or anything that relies on floating memory. Also with the Grail, we can bring this in for the Fractal matchup to Grail into the Safeguard Amulet. Then we have 3 copies of Song of Frost. This is also really good against the Nico as well as the Jin. 2 Snow Fairies. These are just good against generic things that people might bring. We have 2 copies of Blanche, which is good against the Sinew and the Fractal decks. And then Expel the Departed, which is good against the Fractal decks. Alright, and then for what the tokens do, so the first token is a Power Cell. You don't really need to know anything about the effect, but the nice thing about it is it's very fracturizable, so it just becomes a fractal, and then even after that, you can always use the turbocharge to just draw cards. If you can turbocharge at basically any point to just draw some cards, so super good for the deck. Then there's Obelisk of Protection, which is for 4 costs. You can rest it to prevent 2 damage of any type to any unit. So it's really nice. It also goes down in cost for every domain you control, including itself. So it starts off at a 3 cost, but very quickly becomes free. Most of the time I don't ever even pay for this. It becomes free so quickly. Next we have Obelisk of Armaments, which for 5 costs you can rest it to bring out a sword, which is a 3/1 sword. So with the Blade of Creation, that means it's cleaving for 7. It also has, similar to the Obelisk of Protection, the 5 drops for every domain you have in play. So it basically starts off at 4, but again, pretty quickly becomes free. Then we have our last obelisk, which is Obelisk of Fabrication, which for 6 cost brings out a automaton drone, which is a 1/1 automaton with, and this gives it a buff counter, so it's a 2/2. And then similar to the other 2 obelisks, that 6 does drop for every domain that you control. So it starts off at 5. This one, I have gotten it to be free before, but it's a bit harder than the other 2, just because it means you do have to control a full 6 domains. So it's a bit harder to get to that free status, but even if you make it a 1 cost, it's usually good enough to just summon out a 2/2. And then this isn't the token, this is the Ares, but we're going to talk about the token that summons. It summons out 2 Atmos shields, and then for every Atmos shield you control, it gets +1 to its attack. So even if you just summon this one, it becomes a 3/5, which is insane for 3 costs. And then what the shield does is it does 2 different things. You can rest it to prevent 2 non-combat damage, or if your opponent attacks a Neos unit, which could be Atmos, it could be your Tonoris, or it can even be the other shields, you can redirect it to this. And it is important to know that you can do it with the other shields, because the nice thing about that is, like, let's say your opponent has like 2 1 power things. Sometimes they'll just try to kill the one, so they'll attack this one, and I'll be like, okay, this takes 1, like, okay, kill it, and I'll just send it to the other shield, which makes it where you just protect everything a lot more. So it's really nice in that regard. So that's what the tokens do. I think this deck is really fun. If you want to give it a try, please do. Test some different things. One thing that isn't in this deck is I do not have the Proxius Vault Guardian card, the Demiurge, I think it is called. I personally don't like that card as much. One, I don't have as many upkeep costs. The only upkeep cost I have is Eternal Kingdom, and that's a very, very easy upkeep cost to pay for, so it's not really worth it. And it just bringing out a single automaton token just isn't what I believe is super great. So that's just why I don't play it, but go ahead and try it out for yourself. Thank you very much. I will see you probably for our next stream or for another deck profile in the future. So until then, thank you very much and have a wonderful day.